Okay,
Right?
here we have
Yeah.
episode 31. Hello again, Master Yap. Thank you very much for
Yes.
joining us. This is our third interview podcast.
Yes.
And I know that you are coming to visit us in May with
Yeah.
Dennis Wang, 18th
Yes.
and
With
19th of
with
May.
enthusiasm. Yes. Yeah. Looking
Yeah,
forward. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of interest growing steadily now in Ireland, which is fantastic. I wanted to address because over the last few months since we met in October last year, as people have been
Mm.
asking me, what's the difference between Qi Gong and Nei Gong, apart from
Mm-hmm.
obviously being a different spelling and a different word? Can you
Yeah.
give a little bit more of a context to that for us?
Okay. Uh, I think you can say the clue is actually in the names, you see. I think Qi Gong, as you know, as most people know, is well, qi comes from the word qi, which is to do with your qi, your life energy, yeah, which is
Yeah,
commonly is a Chinese terminology. And Gong means to do the hard work, So Qi Gong means to do the hard work, to practice, to develop your qi. Whereas Nei Gong literally translates into internal work. All right. And what that means is to learn how to work on your internals, or rather your internal energies. And this has a direct relevance on your health, your well-being. And if you're a martial artist, it's also important, well, for the internal development of, internal martial arts. What I like to say is Nei Gong is the original term as used in Shaolin or in China in the old days. If you look at the ancient texts, there's hardly any mention of Qigong. The term they use is normally Neigong. And if you understand what is meant by internal work, then the word internal work covers a much wider scope, because it not only covers, the different energies. As we know, we have different kinds of internal energies. The common ones, as most people will know, is your Jing, Yi, and Qi, right? The Jing meanings the internal force derived from fascia, tendons. E is your intention, although it is not a force itself, but it is one of the key components that allow you to develop and control the other internal energies. That includes Jing and Qi. And basically, Qi is another form of energy, and that is very important for the sustenance of one's health, based on the principles of traditional Chinese medicine. So, so Neigong has a much broader concept and covers a much wider range of things. So it also covers, in the case of Shaolin, and if you understand that Shaolin is not not just an institution that teaches martial arts, it's more like a university that covers three major disciplines, you see. And the three major disciplines being number one, of course, martial arts. Number two is also traditional Chinese medicine, because in Shaolin, in the old days, you were also taught acupuncture and using herbs for healing as well. And also, of course, all the, principles behind health and healing, well-being and healing in traditional Chinese medicine. And of course, the last thing which Shaolin is well known for, it is actually a Buddhist monastery. So, of course, you learn about Buddhism. And what is more important also, I think the key underlying principle of Buddhism is more not so much as a religion, but the understanding and the management or control of one's mind, you see, how you control your thoughts, your emotions, your inclination to do bad or good things, compassion and so on. So all that is under the, you can say, body of knowledge under Buddhism. So if you look at Neigong, it covers all those three aspects, you see. So again, I use the analogy of Shaolin like a university. So when you first enter Shaolin, you'll be doing all the hard qigong, all the hard exercises and what we call the hard qigong, which is like, strengthening of your bones, breaking of boards and, doing two-finger push-ups and things like that. But as you progress up that scale, you go to, let's say, to your master's program then you will learn to include the other things, you see. So, for example, then once you go into the, higher level, then you start to learn about healing and how the different energies can be applied to healing. And also, of course, the most fundamental thing you learn in Shaolin is about Buddhism, you see. And in the PhD program, as you call it, right at the top, where the senior monks are, after you progress from the lower levels to the top, then the knowledge that you're taught, which encompasses the martial arts, the TCM, the traditional Chinese medicine components, as well as the philosophy and the religion, all that is then bundled together as something called Nei Gong, you see, or rather internal arts. So I would say that Nei Gong encompasses all the three disciplines, you see, at the highest level. Of course, there are different levels of Nei Gong as well. Now, having said that, the tradition of Nei Gong in Shaolin was well known, even back thousands of years ago. And because people see the evidence, you have these monks, right, who are 80 years old, yet they could be jumping around, they could do martial arts and they could heal people. So there is a sort of pressure to bring these arts out of the temple, you see. And what could be a more, powerful pressure than the emperor itself, right, from the royal court. So Shaolin was, in a way, then had to adapt the knowledge and the skill sets, that you need to learn Nei Gong and to make it approachable or available to the lay person, you see. And hence, the coin Qi Gong was termed, you see, was coined, because you can say it was a more simplified version of the disciplines that you practice in Nei Gong, which could then be applied to people who have not gone through that years of monastic practice. So if you look at it that way, Qigong is a relatively modern term, is it? Compared to Neigong, whereas Neigong is something that is mentioned in the old classics and the writings, whereas Qigong is something that is fairly modern. When I say, even though I say modern, it still goes back a few hundred years. So in that sense, Qigong is a subset of the things that are normally taught in Neigong. But having said that also, Qigong is the more commonly accepted or, commonly used term, you see. So if you tell somebody, oh, I teach Neigong or I'm practicing Neigong, they may not really understand it. Whereas Qigong, and especially when you mention it in conjunction with things like Tai Chi, then they get it straight away, I think. So I guess we have to start educating people about, what is Nei Gong. So I think in that respect, what you can say is authentic practices of Nei Gong actually preserve the traditions and the practices that have been used by institutions like Shaolin, and not only Shaolin, also Wutang, right? Wutang is the other center for internal practice, and the difference being Shaolin is more based on Buddhism, whereas Wutang is based on Taoism. But I think in the course of Chinese history, there has been some overlap and intermixing, of certain terms, of certain knowledge from both of these schools, you see. So they are not antagonistic in that sense, although they may be different, and I think quite different, but they are not antagonistic. I mean, some of the core principles are still the same. So I think in the teaching of Neigong, what we're trying to do is to preserve these traditional practices, this very deep and you can say, knowledge, you see, and to, preserve it and keep it there for the next generation and not lose it, you see. And of course, there are all the benefits from learning Neigong, and Qigong as well. But I would say Qigong was good for almost anyone who wants to get started and want to stay healthy. But if they want to go deeper, then I think Nei Gong would be the way to go. But like I said, you can think of it as the two things are almost the same. It's just a matter of degree, you know, how deep and how intensive do you want to go into the practice? Yeah, I hope that is able to explain it more
Yeah,
clearly.
thank you. Yeah, I wanted to talk as well about the the simplicity but with depth that you bring with the Yan Sha Gong, because I know that some people coming to see you in May have an interest in Yan Sha Gong. Some people have an interest in what Dennis does, which is
Yeah.
medical Qigong, and and you're going to combine your skills together and showcase what's possible. I know, and there'll be some people that lean more towards your work and some people lean more towards Dennis's work, and there's some people who want to learn both. So could
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about the synergy between you and Dennis, and then also maybe explain from your point of view how Yan Sha Gong and why Yan Sha Gong was created? This idea of practicing at the level that you're at, and using its simplicity to bring depth to your internal cultivation.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is a good question. But let me qualify one thing first. I think Master Dennis' art of Han Yang Ru Yi Qi Gong, although he calls it Qi Gong, I would classify it rather as a Nei Gong because it has some very deep practices. And in the exercises for the Nei Gong, you almost go into a sort of meditative state, you see, as you connect with your mind, your body, and your energy, you see. So I think his is more Neigong rather than Qigong, although he's quite humbly called it Qigong. Now, okay, coming back to Yan Shao Gong, maybe a bit of history would help to explain things, you see. Now, the original Neigong art, the two arts, or whether you can call it styles, that were practiced in Shaolin in the old days, for the senior monks, were two arts called Wuji, Wuji Quan, right? Wuji means the art of emptiness, you can say. And Quan basically means fist, right? So Wuji Quan and Lohan Ruyi Quan, right? So Lohan, as you know, is the Arahant, okay? In Buddhist terminology, it is those beings who have already achieved enlightenment. Like, I think another way to call it in the Sanskrit term will be a bodhisattva, all right? And they have decided to stay on this plane to help others. They are also known or visualized as protectors of the Dharma. They also call Dharma protectors in Buddhism. One way to envisage them is if we go to a Buddhist temple and you see these big statues of fierce temple guards, right? Those will be the Lohans, you see. So they are the protectors of the Buddha, of the Dharma, and the teachings of Buddha. So that is a Lohan. So these Lohans are, so the art Lohan Rui we're borrowing from that term. Lohan is and describes that sort of a superior being, or rather enlightened being. And Ro Yi means soft intention. So Lohan Rui means the Lohan art of soft intention. So meaning that it emphasizes using the Yi, the intention part of the three energies I mentioned earlier, the Jing, Yi, and Qi. So Lohan Rui would put a lot of emphasis on the Yi component, which is of course essential if you want to use it to develop your Qi as well as your Jing. Okay? So those were the two arts, Wu Qi and Lohan Rui. But these arts were very deep and they were very difficult to practice because the monks have gone through a fair bit of not only physical training, but also mental training, right? Because it involves, they would have learned meditation and stillness of mind and concepts like that. So, and generally these arts will be, you can say, out of reach of the ordinary lay person, because you could just learn the movements, but without going deeper into it, without being able to focus on the not only the breathing, but also the mental state, what we call stillness of mind, you will not be able to make much progress, you see. And also there were very many moves, like for example, the Wu Chi has more than 36 forms, yeah, and the Lohan Rui has 108 forms, you see. So to be able to learn all of that, you really literally need to be in a monastery for 10 years or more. So, and fortunately for our lineage, our great grandmaster Qi learned these arts, from his teacher who was directly from Shaolin itself. And he brought these arts to Malaysia. And when he first started teaching it out openly, was in I think the 80s, the late 80s, no, the 70s to the 80s, yeah. So he was then started teaching these arts, and over a period of 10 years, he noticed that most people did not get it in that sense. They did not get the finer, qualities of the art, like for example, the ability to feel the qi, to redirect the qi, move the qi, and so on. So after that, after knowing that, noticing that, my father also noticed that because he was one of the teachers of these arts, the Wu Chi and the Lohan Nui. The two of them decided to distill the art down into something that is more quicker and easier to learn. And now, bearing in mind what it means is it's not a process of simplification, because in simplification, it means you're taking things away. So in the case of Yan Sha Gong, which was distilled, I would rather use the word distilled from the arts of Wu Chi and Lohan Nui. What they did was they took the best parts of Lohan Nui and the Wu Chi, and they compressed the whole, 100 over forms into 36 short forms. That is now the Yan Sha Gong. So, and to me, I think that is a great achievement, because although you have seen the Yan Sha Gong and like some of the moves, even the first form, it's no more than maybe 30, maybe 20 or 30 moves. But yet the depth of it is so amazing, because I keep discovering new things, you see, even as I practice and teach the art, little nuances, little gems like, oh, if you turn your hand this way, you get a better feel of the sensation of your tendons and your fascia. Or if you, make your spine upright, when you put the weight on your heels, you have this sensation of energy coming up your spine, So little details like that are all already in the form. So it's up to the practitioner in that sense to decipher and interpret them, and of course, to practice to get the results, you see. So I would say what Yan Sha Gong is it's like fine literature or fine poetry, you see. It is short, it's not very long, but the meaning of it is so deep, and there are multiple interpretations of the things that are in there, you see. Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so interesting. And I think because of the 36 forms, they're much shorter, and each of the form is much shorter. It also makes the whole learning process much faster, which I think is important in the modern context. Because I think most people, even if they are very interested in Qigong, they will not want to learn a form that has maybe 108 moves, which are quite common for the older forms, you see. And which means that it'll take you a long time to learn it, and it'll take you a long time to practice it, you see. So the essence of the Yan Sha Gong, as I like to term it, is the three quicks, you see. So it's quick to learn because we can teach a form in an hour, less than half an hour. So someone can pick up the movements of the form, in about half an hour. It's quick to practice because once you learn the form, you're familiar with the movements, it shouldn't take you more than 2 or 3 minutes to complete a form. So, if you have a long form, let's say a Tai Chi 108 move form, it takes you almost 30 minutes or 40 minutes to complete the form. And then you have the excuse, oh, I don't have time to do it, or if I want to practice my form, I got to find a time slot where I have this amount of time. And in a busy schedule, you never find that sort of time slot, you see. But if I just need 5 minutes to practice my form, then there's a much higher likelihood, right, that you will practice your form. So as I always tell my students, there's no excuse. You can't do three sets, in the morning before you even brush your teeth. And that will be a good pickup, right? Pick me up, and you're already fresh, after you brush your teeth. So the quick to practice is the other part. And what I find very amazing is also the quick results. Although the forms are short, they are condensed, it doesn't mean that you cannot get results from it, you see. So I've been teaching the Yan Sha Gong seriously since 2010, and I dare say there's been quite a number of my students who've been able to pick it up. And I think the learning process from learning Yan Sha Gong seems to be a lot quicker compared to, other Qigong, or I mean, not to be negative about Tai Chi or the other Qigong, but what my experience is learning Yan Sha Gong is 1/3 the time it takes to learn, say, some other Qigong or some other, style of internal art. You see? So you have almost a 3x faster track, when you do Yan Sha Gong compared to other things, you see. So I think that is also important because people don't want to wait 10 years or 20 years before you get results. You want to be able to get the results as soon as possible, especially if the benefits of those results can immediately have an impact, a good impact on your health, right? So you don't want to wait 10 years before, I can do something that will help me improve my health. I want that as soon as possible. And I think Yan Sha Gong certainly meets that criteria.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very good. I mean, for myself, I mean, we had a conversation there, I think it was last year, around reverse engineering, and you were able to reverse engineer some of the previous Nei Gongs that I'd learned with the principles of YSG. But the
Yes.
thing that drew me to you was we had a conversation, I think it was over nearly a year ago in the Netherlands, about maintaining health and maintaining one's own personal health, and starting to take responsibility, because so many times we end up, as you had said to me, outsourcing our health to other people all the time instead
Yeah.
of building a momentum, a potential, an internal wellness that, mitigates a lot of that general day-to-day health issues that we often face.
Yes.
More so than that, it's not even, I know it's called the art of longevity, and I think that's a double-edged sword, because it's not only, it's an art that has survived and will probably survive for a very long time, but also it's an art that helps you maintain not just longevity, but a quality of longevity. So
Yes.
perhaps you could maybe talk a little bit about some of your experiences of helping people to take responsibility for their health and to work with themselves on a daily basis. I definitely have benefited from, like, even 20 minutes a day, just even 20 minutes. And some days can be extremely profound, and other
Yes.
days it can just be very much, you need to just do a physical movement, open up the channels, make the connections, and feel. It's almost like you're feeling out the vessel that you live in, and you're investing
Yes.
from that vessel that you live.
Yeah.
Is that
That
right?
is precisely it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the cool thing about Yan Sha Gong is, instead of teaching very elaborate, movements or rituals, think of it as rituals, it focuses on getting things done, you see, it teaches you on very core principles on how to move your body in a particular way, you see. And if you talk to people who've been doing internal work, right, internal arts, and or you ask one of the old masters, what does learning internal arts involve? And the old saying is, first, you will use the outside to move the insides, and then towards the end, you use the insides to move the outside. And in a nutshell, and I think this is where I've been able to synthesize out of this old, wisdom, you can say this saying, a methodology and a process for learning internals, which not only makes sense, but sort of accelerates the whole process, you see. And I call this the 5 stages of learning internals. So the first stage is correct as per the old masters, First, you use the outside to move the inside. What it means is that the movements that are in an authentic lineage of an internal art, Qi Gong or Nei Gong, has the purpose of moving certain internal structures. So as we do it in the beginning, we are more concerned with sort of moving your fascia, your tendons, and your skeletal structure in a certain way, you see. And in doing so, you're making what we call connections. Now, you can think of it, connections, as another way of what is commonly known in traditional practices as clearing blockages, you see. So instead of, let's say we have a pipe and then clearing the blockages, we look at it from the other perspective is that why don't we straighten the pipe? So if your pipe is all kinked up like this, then obviously you will have a lot of blockages. But if your pipes, right, the channels for your internal energy are all aligned and straight, then you will not have any blockages. So the connections, as I call it, and blockages are 2 sides of the same thing, you see. So by using the correct movements, you are actually realigning all the internal structures in your body, and these are the structures or the channels for energy to move, you see. And in that sense, you are sort of learning how to realign all those structures so that you get rid of the blockages and the energy has a clear channel to flow through, right? So that is the first stage. Now, as you start doing the movements, you will feel certain sensations inside your body. You could feel a bit of stretching, a bit of pulling. Sometimes people feel heat or warmth, Some people feel like there's a flowing of a liquid, like there's water. So all these are the different sensations that you get when the insides get moved. And it is important then to turn your awareness inside, So this is where the term mindfulness comes in, you see. So you want to be mindful of what is happening on the inside as you do those movements, Then you begin to get a sensation to feel, this part is connected to this part, and this part affects my shoulder or affects my lung or my breathing, or by doing this, opening the fascia here, it makes my breathing easier. So these are the sensations that you want to be aware of. So we call that stage 2, see, to be aware and mindful of you can think of it as the minor changes that are undergoing, that your body goes through. And you are then become aware of the micro anatomy of your body, let's say. And then comes the third stage, because once you're aware and you know where those things are, then the third part is learning how to control it, Let's say if I learn how to contract my fascia here in this point, I can actually sink my energy to the ground. So that third stage is learning to control. And once you have that level of control, of course, there are many ways to control it. Of course, you can use it with your hand movements. You can use it with your breath. You can also use it with visualization and your mind. Yeah, with you can think of it as, we also call that intention. Then once you can control it, then leads you to the fourth part where you learn to direct and generate and direct energy. So then you begin to be able to generate energy, and you can direct it to go, let's say, to your shoulder, to your stomach, to your intestines, And that would be, of course, very important for healing and well-being because, let's say, again, using TCM principles, yeah, you have a weakness in your liver or your gallbladder or something like that, then you're able to channel your energy there. And that would, help you to overcome the ailments that you have, you see. So the fourth part is the ability to direct energy and channel it to where you want it to go is important part, So there's the fourth stage. And finally, more for the martial artists than others, is how to use the inside to move the outside. That means that instead of moving my arm using just my muscles, I'm now using energy, my internal energy, to move my arms. So for the martial artists, that allows them to generate more power for combat and so on. Hence, you have this phenomenon called fa jing, right? Where fa means in Mandarin means fa means to expel, to express, and jing is one of the three energies, the elastic energy from your fascia. So that's where you see an old master can bounce somebody, but you also have the ability to fa qi, which is to express qi, you see, to expel qi from your hands. And that is very useful for healing and has direct applications for healing, you see. And that is precisely what Master Dennis, Art of Hanyang Rui does, He teaches you how to fa qi and use that to perform healing on, patients, and also on not only skeletal, musculoskeletal ailments, but also ailments related to soft tissue, really, right? So those are the type of healing that the Hanyang does. Now coming back, and let's talk about the the synergy between the two arts of Yan Sha Gong and Hanyang. As I mentioned before, Yan Sha Gong's strength is the ability to learn and quickly get your internal structures and your internal energy going. By learning Yan Sha Gong, you can literally kickstart your internal energy very quickly, you see. We are talking even for people who have not done any qigong, within a matter of months, you are able to get, to feel qi in your hands. Like some people, their hands are always cold. They have poor circulation or poor, in their hands and feet. After doing Yan Sha Gong for just a matter of maybe 1 month, 2 months, they begin to feel the hands and the feet start warming up, you see. So Yan Sha Gong gives you very quick results and very quick benefits in that sense. And after you got the energy going, then you learn to direct it. And this is where it directly complements the Hanyang, because the Hanyang has a lot of protocols and techniques, you can say, that you apply to healing. They can, they project qi, for example, using the Lao Gong. They can even draw qi, negative qi out of a person through the Lao Gong and the back Lao Gong. So there are many protocols for healing that is specific to Hanyang, which I think is very orientated towards healing. That's why it is a medical qigong. So the ability to build a more powerful engine, right, using Yan Sha Gong, not that Hanyang does not have its qigong, it does have its own methods of, building up your qi. But in my personal opinion, Hanyang does it much faster. And once you have that energy, then you can use that energy in the healing, and you have, be more productive in it, and also give better results in the healing as well. So the two arts complement each other very well. And we have been working together for a number of years now. And yeah, it has proven to be a very successful, partnership in that sense, Yeah.
I find for me that the Yan Sha Gong helps me with the applied healing. So hands-on, tui-na, being able to affect the fascia, soften the fascia without using strength. Because with some people, they're extremely tense. And I know when I was over in the Netherlands, you did a treatment on me, and it was interesting because when you were using your jing to cut through layers of fascia, but I was feeling, even though it was my shoulder, I was feeling it going down into my feet, which is kind of, it makes sense to me being a therapist and being into that, but it certainly wasn't a meridian style chi. It was a
No, yeah,
structural realignment. With Dennis's stuff, we've been practicing it once a month with a group, and it's more similar to the kind of qigongs I would have learned in China for
yes,
transmission of an electromagnetic style of energy, which has its
yes,
benefits too. Um, and I do think the two of you, having seen the two of you work together, it's a nice complement. It's almost like you have the internal working the internals to move the chi outside of the body, and then with Dennis's, you're gathering the chi to move it into the body and then process it to send
mm,
it. So it's a different kind of feel, and I think there's benefits to both. And I definitely agree, because for me, I practiced a lot of qigongs incorrectly, and it damaged me. And
oh
I
wow,
realized I needed the Yan Sha Gong to
mm-hmm.
rebuild the damaged building, to literally put the
Right,
bricks and the mortar
good,
back together, so that when
mm-hmm.
I came back to learning medical qigong, I then had a better building, a better structure. Um,
Yes,
and I think for me, Yan Sha Gong brings a depth of grounded and rootedness that you don't get with many, shall we say, off the shelf qigongs. There's a lot of what I say, off the shelf solutions.
yeah,
Uh, they're kind of, for want of a better expression, kind of made up.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
but I'm fortunate that two of my early teachers were very, very inquisitive, and they investigated and they sourced and they looked for the most authentic stuff. But even
uh,
still, they couldn't explain the internal mechanics that you need to be aware of. So it's
mm-hmm.
interesting, even really high level teachers don't always have the complete knowledge.
Yeah,
And I wanted to move on into this idea. I know that obviously I've met Lyndon, Gary, and some of the other instructors from the Netherlands, and some of the people from Malaysia, and it's been interesting to see their take on it and their progress in it. And I wanted you to
yeah,
maybe talk a little bit about the level of teaching, how to ensure quality, how to make
mm-hmm.
sure quality is more important than having lots of instructors.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, I think because this art, the art of Yan Sha Gong is quite unique in the sense that it has a very precise way of teaching and expressing, right? Basically, we are emphasizing a lot on principles and concepts rather than just doing exercises blindly, you see. So understanding the principles and the concepts is just as important as practicing the exercises, because if you just practice without understanding the concepts behind it or the reasons of why things are done that way, then you're sort of like, practicing blindly. You're sort of like driving a car down a road, but you don't know exactly where you're going. You don't have a map. You don't know what your destination is, you see. But if you have a clear set of directions, and which is what we try to provide with the principles of, for example, grounding, centering, and so on, then it's like having a map. So when you drive, you're a lot more confident. If I turn left here, I will get to this place. And if I turn right here, I will get to this place, you see. So that is how we want to teach, you see, by providing not only the driving technique or how you drive the car, but by giving you a good road map, and also not only a good road map that tells you where to go, but also when you get there, you know what you arrived at, you see. So I just tell you, go there and you come to this place. But what is at this place? If I tell you, okay, when you arrive at this place, you will see a big tree, and behind that, there will be a big field, and further back in the background, there will be a big castle, for example. So that when you arrive at your destination, you know that you've got there, you see. So these are what we have this in our roadmap for learning internals, we call the milestones. And these are, you can say, is literally milestones in your development of your internal skills. So the first milestone we have is grounding, right? So grounding literally means that you have a structure in your body. Your body is not limp, and that structure is provided by understanding what we call strings. But the fancy word for that, I mean, the medical word for that is your myofascial meridians. Okay, so by understanding these myofascial meridians within your body, you are able to make your body stronger, strong yet resilient, and by being able to, then this gives you your structure. And grounding is nothing more than being able to plant this structure that you have achieved firmly on the ground, so you have stability, and not only stability but also resiliency. That means that you're not rigid, you don't break easily. So we have grounding. So the next one is something, is a term we call centering, and this is common in all martial arts. And I found out, even surprisingly, this concept of centering is also very established in the field of psychology, or psychotherapy. Right? So you have the mental aspects of centering, which to me is analogous to the physical centering. So in physical centering, what we want to achieve in martial arts is that I stay in that place no matter how you push or how you attack me. I will want to maintain my position. So that is point number one, but that is not the only way, because you can be very firm in one place, but if you're not resilient, you will break. So think of it as like a thin stone pillar versus a bamboo, So if the stone pillar is the same diameter as the bamboo, most likely with the same amount of force, the stone pillar would break before the bamboo. So the bamboo will just bend and it will spring back. See? So that resiliency is an important characteristics of centering. And also from the martial art point of view, centering doesn't mean that we only want to stay in one position, say X marks the spot. Because in martial arts, we need to move. If your opponent is very powerful, you certainly don't want to stand there and take the brunt of the force. So you must be able to move out of the way and still regain your ground, you see. So that second point about regaining your ground is equally important. So centering means being able to hold a position, being able to be resilient, to give with the force. And thirdly, it also means that you can give up your position temporarily and get back into it. So that is the concept of centering, right? And I think in that sense, it has a much deeper meaning of just boom, being plonked there and don't move. And then once you have your centering, your grounding and your centering, then you have your rooting, okay? So your rooting, well, to put it very simply, is instead of just having a physical connection with the ground, with rooting, you actually have an energetic connection with the ground. So I mean that metaphorically, you see. So a good example is your bamboo. The bamboo has got roots, as the roots are firmly stuck on the ground. So even though the bamboo would bend, you're unlikely to uproot the whole bamboo. See? And same thing, let's say, in your structure, you see. So for the martial arts, once I can master the skill of rooting, that means that I can take a bigger force than what I can do in grounding, and I can take that force and put it into the ground, So you can say, think of it as, it's like electricity, you see. You put a current to a grounded circuit, the current just goes to the ground. So basically, it means I can take that energy that someone gives me, and I can sink that energy to the ground, and that allows me to handle a lot more energy than if I couldn't root, you see. And the other part of it, the corollary of that, is that not only can I put the energy to the ground, I can also bring energy up from the ground. So in a lot of martial arts, we have the metaphor of bringing energy up from the ground. And that, of course, there are many explanations for that. But being rooted allows me to then sink and bring energy up from the ground. Now, again, if we use a classical explanation of this, I think, in the Chinese metaphysics, most people have heard of the term heaven, man, earth, right? Yeah. So in rooting, what it means is I can connect my human energy to the earth energy, you see. So meaning that, yeah. So, and of course, that is the key concept behind rooting, right? Yeah. And yeah, so knowing these steps, and of course, after that, the rooting, then is the ability to sink energy down, bring energy up. And the next milestone we emphasize is when not only can I bring the energy up from the ground, or I can generate the energy, let's say from my dantian, I want to be able to put that energy into my hands, you see? Because these are my tools. This is what I work with. Whether I'm a martial artist, I'm using it to fight, or I'm a healer, I'm using my hands to do tui-na massage, or to project energy into soft organs for healing. You see? So those are the steps. Now, coming back to, maybe I can give a clearer explanation between, the two types of healing. I think, when it comes to traditional Chinese medicine healing, I think the healing can be divided into two parts. And the way I would divide it is, one has to do with the muscular skeletal structure. That means your physical body, right? The support part of your body. It means the muscles, the skeleton, the tendons, the fascia, and so on, you see. So normally there will be injuries due to, sprains, overexertion, and so on. Then on the other hand, you have the healing of the soft organs, and this is where TCM normally comes in, right? Where you talk about the gallbladder, the heart, all the 5 major organs and so on, you see. So I think the traditional, or rather the body of knowledge that is more common out there to do with meridians and acupuncture points and acupuncture, and has to do more with the healing of the soft organs, right? That means, whereas the tui-na and the massage therapy and so on has to do more with the muscular, and also, as we know now, it's not just the muscular, but also the fascia that is part of your body. And to explain, what you mentioned just now, how we use the Qing to cut the fascia, is this comes back from my martial arts background. I come more from a martial arts background, and it's only within the last, well, maybe 5, 6 years, I've gotten more interested in the healing aspects. Previously, I was more interested in the breaking aspects. So anyway, so these techniques about cutting is derived, actually, adaptation from what we use in our martial arts, you see. So instead of using that energy to destroy, what we do is use the energy in a more moderated way, in a more gentle way, to connect with the fascia of the person you're trying to heal. So normally fascia, as you know, is many layers, right? And sometimes the injury or the trauma will be at the deeper layer. And the conventional way is to use physical force. It could be using your fist, your knuckles, or tools, or even your elbow, right? To go deep down, you see. And of course, that causes more trauma because, when a body that's already injured or traumatized feels that someone is putting more force into it, it will fight back, it will tighten up, and it will create more tightness rather than loosen up. And you then have to even use more force to counter that reaction, you see. Whereas if you approach it from a more gentle way and use energy, in this case, the Qing, to sort of, I say I talk to the fascia. I asked it to, okay, relax. This is not a threat, right? And using the energy, it actually helps the fascia to relax. And that's where it starts to sort of unwind itself, It's like, you can think of fascia is like sheets of fiber. And sometimes like cloth, right? It gets all crumpled up. And then, or it could be like a string where you have a knot in it, right? So to unravel the knot, pulling on it or pushing hard on it will not help you to unravel, you see. So rather what you do is you take a knot and you knead it around a bit, right? You knead it around and then it will slowly loosen. Then once it loosens, you can start to untangle it. So that is precisely the same principles that we use, you see. So by using the Qing, we sort of knead the fascia without physical force by using energy. And then that allows the fascia to relax. And then it can sometimes even unwind itself, unknot itself rather than having to go in with a lot of physical force.
Yeah.
And over the years, we have used this, both myself and my students, for healing. Not so much for healing other patients because we per se are not healers, but in the process of practicing martial arts, we do get injured. And often this is what we do. We use it as a process to heal ourselves. And that gives us, I guess, the track record to then try and have the confidence to then try and heal someone, you see. So I think there's a better way than trying to use someone else as your guinea pig. So we've used ourselves as guinea pigs in that respect. Yeah. And I find that techniques have worked pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, it's helped me a lot with acute injuries. So when people, you just literally cannot go into that acute phase, and usually
Yeah.
there's a law of treating above and below the injury. But with
Yes.
this, it means I can treat in the region or
That's right.
sometimes distal to that region without affecting, as you say, a trauma response. Um,
Mhm.
all right, so moving on into this, we were talking about. I mean, I've been criticized in the past
Yeah.
for talking about using one's imagination and
Yeah.
visualizing, and that's
Mhm.
just, been told it's a load of BS. But I mean, for me, I think you need to have some level of yi to be able to
Mhm.
facilitate the movement of qi. But
Yes.
so there's a lot of things, a lot of what I call misinformation. So what I wanted to do is address uh, this structure that we've started to see, where we have this idea of a range of people that are teaching, and they're teaching what they know, but they're not able to demonstrate the skill level. They're
Mm.
not able to, there's no basis to their theories. And for you, as I know you're always very honest with us. You say, look, this is the level where I'm at currently. This is what I know where I can bring you to. And I also noticed there's a deeper respect between you and the student. I noticed when you affected change on me, it's like you were able to decipher how much I was able to take. So it was never
Yeah.
this case of just, and I see it in, especially in the martial arts world, where there's this ego takes over, and then it's this case of I'm just going to destroy the student, just for my purposes of demonstrating how powerful I am. And what I always felt with you is it was a case of, okay, I'm only going to take you to where I know you can physically handle,
Yeah.
because I think when, for me and for others, when they're not used to the internal way, it has a different effect on your body to being hit with a normal punch and a kick, or
Yeah.
thrown or joint locked. And I mean, the other day, Lyndon was over with Gary, and I
Mm.
ran. I thought, right, is it okay if I run at you, Lyndon, and try to grab you? And he's like, yeah, sure, come. And I proceeded to be launched about 4 feet into the air. And I was like, how did you do that? And he said, no, I did. You did it to yourself. And it was, I know, see, everybody in the group was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And it was funny because it didn't hurt as such.
Yeah.
Like, I just had no control. It was like my body had been hacked. And we know Lyndon
Mm.
is working really hard to get his skill level
Yes.
up
Yeah.
there. And but he's able to demonstrate where he's able to go. So for yourself, when you look at the structure of Yan Sha Gong or even Wu Zhu Tuan or whatever it is, you've got to, I mean, obviously you guys are at the top of that scale. How do you, we talked about organic growth because how do you, how are we going to manage, what are your advice to those people who are coming in to train in terms of the structure, learning, because the quality of your instructors is extremely high. I've never seen it like that. In previous martial arts I've trained, and there's just been the one or two people, and then the rest are a distilled version. They're literally 10% of their teacher, and they can never seem to get above that. How do we unpack that?
Yeah, this comes back to what we were saying about, training of the instructors, you see. I think one thing that is key is our methodology, okay? And that doesn't mean just the method of doing the exercises, but to create the understanding, behind, to really understand what you mean by internal arts, you see. And that's not just a whole bunch of theory, because you can get really, really lost in the theory, right? If you read the classic books, and there's so many things that I mentioned. But we tend to be very practical orientated. I mean, so we rather focus on what works, what can be achieved, what could be felt, right? Either directly or indirectly. And this is where a lot of hand-to-hand contact comes in, you see. So there's no such thing as being embarrassed or humiliated. I get bounced by my students, just as my students get bounced by me, because sometimes we really have to try things out. And also, as you noted, when I'm teaching, I have to sort of downscale my power level sometimes, right? Of course, if I maintain full power all the time, then my students will never learn, you see, or they might get hurt. Because a good example of this, let's say I'm teaching someone how to fa qing, right? How to bring the qing up from my feet into my fascia and focus it and generate it up to the hands. Now, if I just bounce my student, okay, let's say Lyndon, come here, I'll just boom and do that to him. Yes, it looks very impressive, but he doesn't learn anything from there, right? So I've got to walk through him the process. Okay, this is how I bring the energy up from the legs. Now you can feel it at my qua. Now if you put your fist at my qua, now I'm going to bounce you from the qua. Do you feel that? Of course, yeah. And so on, you see. And of course, if I make a mistake in my process, of doing that, I will be the one that bounces back, you see, because we are both using a fair amount of force, you see, but it's all in a very controlled manner. So there's no win and lose, as I'm saying. So we do a lot of what we call testing, right? And I think you've seen that in the Yan Sha Gong lessons. We emphasize a lot of testing. And it's the testing that allows us to progress, you see, and move ahead in a very, what shall I say, sure manner. It's not like, oh, maybe I can do this. Oh, I feel I can do this. No, it's no if and when, it's yes, I can do it under these sort of conditions. Of course, if I change those conditions, it may be different, right? But so that's how we progress. You see, we really want to test things out. We want to feel, we want to touch, and not only on the physical level, but as you go more advanced, you also want to touch and feel and learn how to test at the energetic level. You see? It means that, okay, you use your qi against me, or I use my qi against you. And let's say, what if I do this? And what if you do that? How would that work? So that is very much part of our learning process, especially with the more senior students. And especially so, these senior students then become instructors, you see. So we go through that process. And I think in that sense, we are more different in the sense that other arts this is a tradition we inherited from Grandmaster Qi Tong, because in the Five Ancestor system, we do this a lot, right? So I've applied it not only to the physical part of the art, but also to the internal part of the art, right? Like, for example, testing for your strings, learning how to maintain and control your strings, yeah? Your myofascial meridians. So we do this a lot. And this is what helps us to maintain the standards, you see. And also, it makes it very clear that when I touch an instructor's hand or one of my students' hand, I'm more or less quite, you know, I wouldn't say more or less, I know quite precisely at what level he's at. You know, I'm more or less sure that, okay, he's capable of doing this and not doing this. And we have a golden rule of thumb when we teach is the instructor or the teacher should not try to demonstrate something that he cannot do. You know, right? That means that I have to be at that level. I teach at that level. I don't try to teach at a level that is above me. I may have the theoretical knowledge. Let's say, oh, I can do this no touch Kung Ching thing, you know, I mean, theoretically. But if I can't do it,
Yeah.
I better don't demonstrate that, you see.
Yeah.
So we only demonstrate or teach what we can do. I think we teach within the capability of our own limits, you see. And I think that is a very important rule to have. Otherwise, it will just be theory, or it's like telling stories, you know.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
tell you all sorts of things, whether you know, you will never be able to get it because I can't get it myself. So how can I teach that, you see?
Sure. But I think there's a large history of, I
Yeah.
think, you know, like we had this discussion last year about the difference between the Western mindset and the Asian
Yeah.
mindset. And I think in my early years, a lot of it was watch me, follow me. You know, and I
Yes.
spent 10 years maybe watching and following and not really knowing what the hell this was about. Like, why do I punch and kick this way? Why do I block this?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that was partly because my teacher had spent a large time amongst Asian culture, Asian teachers, and that's the way he was taught.
Yes.
And then as we've moved on through space and time, we're starting to see how analytical the Western mind is. They have to want to know the answer to everything. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
last time, last time Lyndon was over, one of my students who's done qigong with me decided he really wanted to test Lyndon and get up against the wall and try and push Lyndon over. And he was convinced afterwards. He was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know why I'm doing this." And I said, "Probably doing it because that's what we do in the West. We have to reason and find logic, and that can't
Hmm.
that can't be true." But
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I've
I
what I've
get that a lot sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, what you've managed to do, I think, because you've had your foot in both camps,
Yeah.
having lived in the West and lived in the East, and then had a blend of those analytical
Yes.
and more philosophical mindsets that you can say, okay, how does this relate to the body physically first? Therefore, there's no point trying to demonstrate the higher level skills until people can literally energize those engines or
Yeah.
create a mind body connection that facilitates the change that is necessary. And even what I like is the strictness, not and I don't mean strictness as in, somebody walking around with a stick beating you, but it's more like the accuracy of the movements is
Yes. Yeah. Precision, we call it. Yeah.
precision. Yeah, precision is paramount to progress.
Yes.
And so I've really enjoyed that. Even if your finger or your thumb is not quite in the right position, you can't generate the power or the energy to feel it. And I want to emphasize to people who are listening to this that it's not those of you who have no real interest in martial arts. It's not about that. It's about understanding that if you're training the forms, that you have a way of testing, is the form you're doing correct? Because there's a famous saying that Bruce Lee had, which was like, I do not fear the man with one really good technique. I fear the man who's perfected the technique 10,000 times. And I think
Mhm.
that, although that's a bit of Hollywood showcasing, I think he's correct in what he's saying. But the caveat is that technique has to be done correctly 10,000 times
Yes.
with
Yeah.
precision. Um, and that's the thing I'm noticing is there's a ever constant involvement with your teachers. And even speaking to Gary there recently, he's beginning to understand things about his own body, which helps him
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
start to understand blockages in other people.
Yes, yeah.
because he's been basically fighting sheep for 25 years.
Yes. Yes. No, I think you see what those movement, why the precision of movement comes in is precisely going back to the first stage we talk about, you see, is what the old masters say, using the outside to move the inside. So by using the correct movements, you sort of even, a simple, like you have this movement in Yan Sha Gong. Now, let's say if your arm is not vertical and your elbow is not aligned properly, that would seriously impact how your internal fascia system is lined up, you see. And if you're misaligned, that means that that channel is broken. The energy cannot travel up to your arm from your legs, or rather, if someone is pushing from your arm, the energy can't go from your arm back down to your legs. But once you get it aligned, it's sort of like everything clicks into place, like a set of Lego blocks, you just click, 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 and it's connected. And you can immediately feel the difference. You see? So that's why we do the testing. So with that external pressure, someone who's been, giving you that, what do I call it? Active, dynamic force, okay? Then you'll be able to feel, oh, this is not right and this is right, you see? So the ability to register that sensation in your mind really helps you in the learning process, because when you have the right position, then your neurons also wire for that right position, you see? So you then tend to get your arms in the right position. So I think these are parts of that technique. And sometimes, especially with the more micro movements, where it has to do with not so much on your limbs, because you can see your limbs, you can feel them or see them in 3D space. But let's say I want to tension a bit of fascia that is, say, just below my soft ribs, And this is where I think visualization can help, right? Because you have, prior to learning the technique, you have no idea what that part is or what even feels like, you see. So when you don't have that, then the only thing you can resort to is visualization, you see, right? Imagination. So to me, that visualization is important. And as you know, in a lot of traditional meditative, practices like Tibetan Buddhism, there's a lot of meditation going on. Even in Theravada Buddhism, visualization techniques are quite common. So I think in lieu of not having experienced a particular sensation, then the only thing you can do is use your imagination. And that is what visualization is all about. But having said that, visualization is a crutch, you see. And just as with a crutch, right? If you're injured your leg and you're recovering, yes, the crutch will help you walk again. But you don't want to have that crutch with you all the time, right? Once your leg heals, you regain strength, you want to throw that away, you see. And same goes with the visualization. So once I can move that particular part in my body or make it energize or whatever result you want to achieve, then I would not need the visualization anymore, right? I can use the direct sensation, you see, with my mind, you see. So that's part of the mind-body integration thing, you see. So the failure with visualization is sometimes people are too dependent on it. They become addicted to it. And they feel, when they visualize their, moving chi or moving energy, but they are not able to give up their imagination. So their practice then becomes, oh, I imagine I'm moving chi, but in actual fact, you're not, you see.
Yeah.
And I've actually met some long-time practitioners who have fallen. It's not intentional, it's not based on any bad intention, but they've fallen into that trap, you see, right?
Yeah.
They imagine, oh, I can project chi to my fingers because they've been imagining it, but they forgot to let go of that imagination. So when someone who can feel chi feels them, they said, no, you haven't done it. Your chi is maybe still stuck here or stuck, in your upper arm. It's not come to your fingers. So things like that. So imagination can be a tool, but it's just a crutch. You have to drop that once you get to where you want to go. See?
Yeah, I used to think that to my meditation students is, in the beginning, it's a necessary
yeah
thing, visualizing the spine, position of your spine.
Yeah,
And then
that's right.
while it's,
And
I say, stay
the
with
other,
yourself, stay with
okay,
yourself. Once you
yes, that's right.
let
That's
go
right.
of
The
visualization.
mindfulness part is important, you see. So once you get away, once you've used the imagination has achieved its purpose, then that's where the mindfulness should play the major role, right? And I think the other thing that is important people need to note is that we have this saying, you see, sometimes you may not be able to get a body, a technique or a practice because your body is not ready, you know. So in the practice of qigong, as just as practice of meditation, right? Your body will develop, your internal structures will develop, your fascia will change, you see? And even your bone structure and your muscular skeletal structure will realign. So that is a good thing because you're trying to move towards that sort of a perfection in your physical body, you see? And it's not necessarily only in the exterior, but also in the interior. You know? So by doing so, there will be minor changes in your body, and hence people feel sometimes aches and pains here, a bit of twitch there, it's like something is pulling when you move your shoulders.
Yeah.
So all those are byproducts of the training, really. And one should persevere and work through it. Of course, it's important to tell the difference between, the pain is always a important indicator, right? If the pain is not too severe and whether the pain is due to your body trying to readjust itself because you haven't used that part, that muscle or that tendon ever. And when you first start using it, of course, there will be soreness. But that sort of a pain is a good thing because it tells you that, that part actually exists, like we have a joke, you see, you will ache where you don't think you have a muscle, right?
It's
That's because
interesting because I touched
you never
hands.
use that muscle.
I
But now you do.
touched hands with Richard, from the North, Richard McAvoy. And
Yeah, yeah,
Lyndon said, just keep hold on for as long as you can.
yeah.
And it was really interesting because the following day I felt like I'd been in the gym, even though all I was doing was holding on to his hands.
Yes. Yeah. So the body would also change. So that's why we have this term, translated directly from Chinese. We call it body change, you see. So your body will undergo changes as you practice your internal arts. And of course, if you have the correct guidance of a good teacher, and they will tell you, this is this is not an injury, it's just a change. Do persevere with your training because you got to push through it. Because the other mistake is sometimes people when they hit the pain, then they think, oh no, I'm injured. And then they back off on their practice, you see. And then what it means is you never go past that barrier. Or if it's a blockage, you'll never be able to clear that blockage because every time you hit that blockage, you have a sensation of pain. It may be minor pain. Then you don't want to push through it. So this is something to be aware of, like in internal practice. And I've undergone that. I've had other students undergone that all the time. And it can be so severe, let's say, especially with lower back, the Mingmen area. And a lot of, as you know, when you break, a lot of blockages happen there at the Mingmen, right? The lower back.
Yeah.
And it can be, I've experienced it myself. It's been so bad that I can't get out of bed, but you try to, or even you do, do some exercise while lying down. The idea is to activate and mobilize it. But of course, get proper guidance if you're not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I experienced that in the inner alchemy work. Was one of the things I found was the pain would arise, say during stance training,
Yeah.
but then would immediately leave as soon as you stopped.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. It's not injuring me. It's a sign
No,
that I'm holding on and that there's resistance there in the tissue.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
then I remember once doing a meditation with a teacher, and I was getting very annoyed because my mid back, we were sat in sort of a seated meditation, and my mid back was burning and my upper trapezius muscle was on fire. And I was like, this is ridiculously painful. And then the
Mm.
following day, we did it again. And then on the fourth day, third or fourth day, it just eased. It just went to the point where, okay, I've let go.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm not rising up into the shoulders. I'm not bringing my shoulders up to my ears and trying to hold on to my spine. My energy and my awareness is deeper down into the pelvis, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore allowing my shoulders to sit comfortably. But it took sometimes that level of discomfort for the lesson to arise.
Yes.
And that's part of that Gong set, that's idea of
Yes.
skills
The
derived from work and time.
perseverance and hard work. Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually wanted to speak to you. Probably I'll do it later in the week offline about Nei Gong, and I found a Nei Gong set for tui-na.
Okay.
What was really fascinated me is we'd had a conversation about it, and it was very specifically saying Nei Gong, not Qi Gong, and it was very
Mm-hmm.
specifically saying it comes from Shaolin. So it's a
Yes.
Shaolin Nei Gong set, which you'll probably recognize. But I will dig
Mhm.
out the diagrams later, and maybe we can have a little chat around that at
Sure.
some.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think any practitioner that's out there that is a physical therapist, that's a physio or a masseuse or a massage therapist or a tui-na practitioner or even cranial sacral practitioners that want to improve their internal capacity for resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And I know one of the things that I bang on about is you can spend an awful long time trying to protect your energy, building up this auric field and this firewall around your body, this antivirus software. But if you
Mm-hmm.
don't
Right.
have proper grounding, rooting, sinking, then you're going to get sick because and I know when somebody's coming at you or an energy is coming at you and you don't have the capacity to
Yeah. To handle it. Yeah.
handle it, but if you can ground it and send it down, then it takes a lot of pressure off you. And I think that
Yes.
applies to emotional aspects as well. I think there's an awful lot of people in that counseling psychotherapy field that need to spend time grounding and rooting themselves.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So they're constantly in that mental space, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which can prove to be quite difficult.
Yeah.
Here's my dog coming to say hello.
Now, okay, maybe 2 points I'd like to add, which you just brought up. One is when it comes to energy and healing, I think where the practice of the internal arts help, of course, one part of it is in the healing part because you are, giving or projecting energy to the patient or client. But the other part is what I like to call sensitivity, you see? Or in if a direct translation from Chinese, we call it listening. You know, it is the ability to feel the energy of the person that you're working with, and the ability to feel where the blockage is or where the blockage is not, and to feel where does that fascia line connect to. So part of practicing the Nei Gong, the Yan Sha Gong especially, and together with the testing, is you begin to develop these skills. You see, so think of it is your diagnostic tool. It's a very powerful diagnostic tool, which you can then feel the energy or the structure of the other person you're trying to heal. Now, I've seen my Grandmaster Qi do it. I've seen his son do it. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago from cancer. But there was one case where he just ran his hand down a person's back, and then he was able to put his finger to that point and says, "Is this where it hurts?" And the guy go, "Ah, yes." So he was able to detect it just by running his hand, not even touching, by feeling his energy. And he said, this is where your blockage is. So that sort of a skill is very much part of what we do in martial arts, because when we touch hands with somebody, we want to feel where his weakness is, whether his energy is, at his elbow or at his shoulder, and where I can exploit. So that is, I think, another important skill set also, the ability to have that level of sensitivity and what we call listening skills. Yeah. So that's one thing. What was the other thing you wanted to talk about? Oh, now that has slipped my mind. What was the last thing you mentioned?
We were talking about, the idea of the energy coming towards you and not
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
reflect it or bounce it away, but you can sink it and root it, or so if there's
Yeah, that's right.
emotions
Oh,
coming.
yeah. That, and also another point you mentioned about the psychological field, you see. There is now, and I think this has been around for a few years now, very clear medical evidence that trauma and stress is actually stored in the fascia. And the body of work is summed up in a very good book. And that book is called The Body Keeps the Score. And the author I think he's a neuroscientist. I'm not sure whether he's a neuroscientist or a psychologist or psychiatrist, called Bessel van der Kolk, Bessel. Van, he's Dutch, so Van der Kolk. His surname is Kolk, yeah, right? And the title of the book is The Body Keeps the Score. If you don't want to read the book, I think if you go and search on YouTube, you can find a few talks given by him. He especially specializes in working with veterans, soldiers who've got PTSD, Yeah. So, yeah, based on his research, yeah, he says that the fascia actually stores the stress and the trauma that the patient suffers. And if you can release the tension and the trauma in the fascia, it also helps to release the mental trauma as well. So that is in fact a very useful principle and fact, and is very relevant to people who are doing, therapy and so on of the psychological kind. And
Yeah,
I think why
as
it points
psychiatrist.
out to this, how the mind and the body is so closely related. And yet we try to separate the disciplines and practice it separately. So if you go to say a therapist, a psychotherapist, the psychotherapist may not recommend you to go and do qigong, or if someone is doing qigong, that qigong teacher may not recommend, hey, I think you need to go and see a psychotherapist. But these two the disciplines all work together, is it? Because the mind and the body are one. They are not two separate things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that book is an important one. A few people I know have read it, and the guy is, I think, a psychiatrist originally,
Yeah.
and was, I think, a New York Times bestseller. I think because the
Yeah.
body of work was so informative. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I have a saying, the issues are in the tissues,
Yes.
and,
Precisely. Yes. Yeah.
I've often experienced people having emotional releases from doing
Yeah. The therapy. Yeah.
practices.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's very good. Is there any other messages we want to impart before we wrap up to the crowd here coming to Ireland? You're coming here on the 18th, 19th. You'll probably be here a few days earlier, but we'll
Yeah.
uh, we'll hook up with Master Dennis Wang also, and the two of you will be showcasing your work. And there will be some people that have a very basic Yan Sha Gong. There'll be others that are at stage 1 and stage 2 trainings, but they'll also benefit a lot from the Dao Yins and the stretching that Dennis is going to show,
Yes.
and some of the
Mhm.
meditations that he brings to the table. So I think it's going to be a very eclectic group. I'm going to post links below for bookings. Um, we're going to try and get a venue that's we're going to hopefully use Kurt's venue, and then get somewhere to stay that's close by so we can all be together as a troupe.
Yeah.
But are there any messages that you want to impart to the people that are coming in May?
I think, well, what should I say? Well, I think basically keep an open mind. Yan Sha Gong has not got the name or the branding of something like Tai Chi, but certainly the body of knowledge that it encompasses, that it was developed from is very deep. And I think it sort of bear testament to that saying goes, which says that keeping something simple is the best, you see. So in our case, is simple does not mean it's not sophisticated, right? So like I emphasized, in Yan Sha Gong, the principle is to try and keep it simple to get people to understand and master the techniques so that they can get the benefits more quickly. So in our teachings, we do not tend to talk so much on theory, just sufficient, but still there's need for sufficient theory to achieve a basic understanding that will give you a guide as to how you should practice, you see. Yeah, I think that's the thing. But yeah, we certainly are not one who, spout a lot of theory.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the reason why people write books. What my first teacher used to say to me, if you're here to learn Qigong for medical reasons, then leave. If you're here to use Qigong for spiritual reasons, then you need to leave now. And he said, if
Yeah,
you're coming here to ask what books to read on Qigong, leave now. He said, you need
yeah,
to spend the next few years just working with what you've been given
that's right.
it as a gift, and then when you start to progress and then you can read, then you can look into the theory, then you can question, because when you have a basic understanding, then questions arise within your training. uh,
Yeah,
Naturally they arise from sensations, from feeling, from
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
experimenting,
yeah,
from understanding what it means to root or sink or to dissolve energy, and all these concepts. You need to feel it first.
yeah, that's right. I think that's the key thing with this learning is because a lot of people when they learn is purely in terms of cognitive knowledge, you see. It's all here. But those are purely concepts, you see. You can't express it into sensations or actions, right? So you need to embody concepts. Those concepts have to be brought into the body, you see. You have to be able to feel it, to be able to work with that energy, put it into your hands and so on, you see. So having a lot of knowledge stuck here just does not work. So in fact, it can be a detriment, right? Because you then think, how come I'm not getting this? How come I'm not getting this? Then you set up a lot of roadblocks for yourself, right? Self-doubts and so on, you see. Rather, just be open, okay? Let me practice it, see what comes out of it, you see. And I think the other term I always tell my students, yes, you can use your intelligence here, but don't forget your body has its own intelligence. You have to practice in order to develop that body intelligence, you see. So having all the theoretical knowledge so that you can argue with somebody on the forum, yes, that
So
may do your ego a lot of good, but it doesn't help you improve, you see. You
no.
need to practice in order to get that body intelligence, you see.
Yeah.
To embody it as a term, the buzzword nowadays is embodiment. You need to embody that knowledge, those concepts into your body so that they can translate into actual things that is relevant to your body, and I think that's a very important thing that people miss out. Sometimes they say, I learned Qigong, I read all about the theory, but how much practice have you done?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the same, I've heard this story goes same with people who study Buddhism and meditation, for example. Somebody has read all the theory on all the dharmas and all that, but when asked the question, how much or how often, how many hours of meditation do you do a day? And they give, and they can't answer. So that's the same with, internal arts, be it Kung Fu, for martial arts or for, yeah, internal development or for healing, you see. I think end of that matter is the practice has to come in. You see. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your time today. I know we've done a long podcast, nearly an hour and a half, which is
Oh,
fantastic.
wow. That long. Okay.
And we could probably talk another hour, but we'll save
I
that.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll save
Yeah.
that
I
for the
think,
next one. Hopefully, we can
yeah.
do one face to face when you're over.
Sure. I'll be more than happy. And, yeah, I
I'd
mean,
love to
yeah,
save,
your audience, the people who want to come to the workshop and so on, yeah, I welcome them. And yeah, I'll be happy and more than happy to meet and chat with all of you.
yeah, that'd be amazing. And at some point, we'll get to talk a bit further and deeper into perhaps later on some of the more spiritual concepts, because I know there are some people who are interested in that
Yeah.
field. So thank you again, Master Yap, for your time.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Important to keep this work moving. I feel like, especially in the West, we really need it right now. We are being crushed under the weight of fast-paced life, and
I know, yeah. And I think the sad thing is the concept of outsourcing everything, like you say earlier, right? Rather than take the responsibility of looking after my health. It's okay. I can see the doctor when I get sick, but that may be too late.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. So all that sort of things. Yeah.
So thank you. I'll end the podcast here, and we'll have it up soon enough with links to the workshops, where you're going to be. I know you're going to be in Germany pretty soon, and then Ireland. Where will you be before Germany? Do you know?
No, I think my first workshop is actually in Poland.
Poland. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And
So
then after that, I think it's Portugal, I think.
Portugal. That'd be nice.
Yes. So we're doing quite a few places.
Yeah. Fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing you again, and
Sure.
we'll have bigger conversations.
Sure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Anthony. It's
Thank
been
you
nice
so much.
talking to you, right? Yes. Bye and have a good day or night. Yeah.
Thank you.